Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sumer Daily. We're hopping on because we have a 2-minute drive from Desmond Ridder that me and Shawn are going to live react to. Shawn, what are you seeing on this play? It looks like we got a condensed set. The Falcons are definitely in prevent, it looks like. Oh, timeout.
Sam, it feels like you're a few seconds behind. You know how we're doing this live reaction. I'd
I
be
am?
a few seconds ahead. It's a little bit of a difficult time for us, but I mean the drive overall. I guess you're able to check the ball down a little bit. You're able to get some yards, just eat up that space. Obviously, you have no timeouts, and I mean you're giving your team a chance at this point where you're going to be able to try and push that ball into the end zone, hoping for. I don't know, maybe you get, a 5 and out, a 10 and out, just pick up a few more yards, just have one more chance. But now you got the ball on a 35. So it feels like it's going to come down to a ball in the air. Who's going to come down with it? Of course, the game with just a lot of weird happenings between blocked punts, blocked extra points. Looks like Ritter's just rolling left. I think he'll have 2 chances in the end. First one gets knocked down. We're gonna have a second one coming up. Sam, the Hail Mary, it feels like the time to engage in a lot of pass interference. It feels like there's not a lot of rules there. It feels like you can really pull. You can really find different ways to create some issues there, and you're going to get away with it.
It's a great point. You're talking about the pass interference. When the Lions were driving late, obviously it came down to a onside kick that ended up being kind of a key onside kick in the Lions-Bills game. I didn't understand why they didn't just commit pass interference every play and let the clock run all the way down. And it almost ended up the Lions miraculously doing it again. But looks like another play is coming up. Shawn, talk me through it.
Ball's in the air. Oh, Jesse Bates, Sam, our guy Jesse Bates looks like he came down with it. Won't have a 50-50 situation. I mean, Bates all year, when we look at the Bengals defense a little bit, obviously he walks from that unit and just think about how they've fallen off in different ways, and for the Falcons to have him and for him to be a playmaker. Now you have 2 game-winning interceptions where he had one against the Eagles as well for a team that, look, the Falcons still have a chance at making the playoffs. They have the tiebreaker over the Buccaneers. They've beaten them twice. You get some struggles in different parts of this game. You're hoping, I think, take care of that Raiders team a little bit closer than a 1-score game. But still, I think the Falcons defense overall, even though the pass rush hasn't been as good as what they've hoped, you still have a guy like Jesse Bates there who on that play, you're able to see them seal the game.
Certainly. So back to our regular scheduled programming on the Sumer Daily Live show. Me and Shawn just had to jump on because there were 2 games tonight and there was a 2-minute drive that, look, I don't think I want to call him my guy, Desmond Ridder, but a guy that I was very terrified of in college when I was playing against him. And I was very terrified of, when I was working for Notre Dame and sitting in the bleachers there. And he kind of KO'd us in our title shots that year where Cincinnati went to the playoffs. And he was moving the ball a little bit. So, we wanted to get you some live stuff so you could second screen. But now we are back to our regular scheduled programming. Shawn, as always, thank you for joining me. 2 games here tonight. What was your kind of general takeaway from both of these games?
Well, Sam, first and foremost, watching the 2 games at the same time, I want to ask you actually how you feel about that, because we usually are doing this one game. Right. Obviously, I have it on the split screen. I feel like my eyes peer a little bit over to that Vikings game a little bit more maybe than the Falcons-Raiders game. I think my overall takeaway for the Vikings, although they struggle a little bit early on, it does kind of feel like they're a house, Sam. I do really like what they're putting together. I think there was some important aspects of Darnold, maybe not struggling, but hitting some road bumps in this game early on where the Bears defense is competent. It can be a strong unit, and some of the different looks that they throw at you. I am interested to see just what Chicago's plan for Caleb Williams going forward is going to be. I really want to see who the hire is going to be, what the plan is overall, how much of it is just like, are you going to draft and develop players in other positions? Is it moving some free agents in that situation? What is able to come of this rookie season, which unfortunately it is just a wash for a first overall pick that had such high hopes. And then you look over to the Falcons and Raiders game for the Falcons again, like they're still on that, like they can win the division. So for the Raiders, I think a lot of this game was to talk about, well, what is their infrastructure for a quarterback if they end up selecting one? If it ends up being Shedeur, if it ends up being Cam Ward, can you, build a passing unit really around 2 tight ends and kind of figuring things out there? So it feels like 4 teams kind of in different spots. I'm glad we got to see Minnesota. I'm excited to talk about them because we'll be able to talk about the Packers next Monday as well. So you know how much all of us love the NFC North.
Yeah. So you mentioned I don't even want to really call it shakiness from Sam Darnold. It just feels different than some of these quarterbacks that we've seen be really successful over the years. Like Geno is up and down from time to time, but it feels different than Geno and Baker and Jared Goff, I think, a little bit. But the issue is he still makes the throws, and the biggest bump is that it doesn't really matter because he has so many good weapons around him. Unfortunately, it ended up now both tackles look like they're going to be down. Brian O'Neill goes out during the game. I think that caused kind of major problems throughout the game. I think they were able to get pressure on that right side, given that it was, a guy coming in, subbing in for O'Neill. But Darnold was able to adapt. There was definitely some drops, some miscommunication, some throws that you don't really want to see, but there was also really good stuff. And when you have Aaron Jones playing well and you have Justin Jefferson, who didn't play his best today, he had a pretty massive drop, but was also able to come down with a great catch right in front of the goal line to set up a touchdown. And then you have that defense clicking. They feel as if they're certainly a team that is dangerous to every single team in the NFC, which you can't necessarily say about really anyone other than maybe the Eagles right now, given the Lions' defensive situation. But break me down kind of the complementary football that the Vikings are playing, particularly on that defensive side of the ball.
The Vikings pass rush is so fun because look, you've all seen them throw 5 bodies at the line. They're going to have stunts and twists and find different ways to just move offensive tackles off their spot. You're targeting an offensive guard in the right way. You're getting smaller, faster bodies on the field overall. It gives you some flexibility, whether you're dropping guys out. I just really like they constantly force your running back to stay in protection so they can find ways to, you're rushing 4, you're rushing 5, but the offense has to waste one of those eligible receivers. So especially if you're an offense that wants to find ways to get that running back, not just as a check down, but as a real part of your passing game, you're going to have a hard time doing that. So you can find situations where you're playing just against those 4 receivers. You can play a little bit more of your 6-on-4 on the back end, play 3 to a side, 3 to the other side. So I really like that. And then for the Vikings offense, I think that I just love that Kevin O'Connell, he just always wants to push the ball down the field. I really, really like that. Whenever there's a drive where it feels like, hey, not maybe momentum, but the Bears are trying to come back a little bit, he's going to press the play action button. You're going to get Darnold throwing the ball down the field. So I like that you see that I think you can take some signal in that, just his confidence overall in Darnold, even though I thought, part of this game wasn't the best Darnold experience for them. But Sam, I think even outside of the Vikings, I still think the Lions obviously have to be taken very seriously.
Certainly.
I'm scared of the Green Bay Packers. I have no interest in playing the Green Bay Packers if I'm in the NFC, where it feels like that defense is also, coming together a bit. I do think they can muddy it up enough to create just some variance on the defensive end, even with some injuries in the secondary. And Sam, that offense, I think when you have Jordan Love, when you see him just pat the ball and separate it a little bit, I just know something good is going to happen. And I feel like across the league for quarterbacks everywhere, you can watch your favorite team's quarterback. And when the play breaks down a little bit, or when it's getting to that 3.5 second mark, how do you feel? How do you feel about your offense? And when it's the Packers, I'm just always thinking a big play is coming. And I wouldn't want to face LaFleur scheming up the run game or the pass game in the playoffs. So I just love that every team, I think, really in the league has a flaw. There is not a rock solid, we are a perfect team. Every single thing, top to bottom, is great, which I love that. I think that that's really exciting. I think overall in the NFC, Sam, I think the playoffs are going to be a bloodbath. I think there are a lot of good teams outside of just the NFC North that I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about in the playoffs.
Well, I'm glad you say it's a bloodbath, because I think if you're looking at getting as many shots at the hoop that you can, you're trying to bet in the NFC North. I said early on in the season that I thought the Super Bowl contender out of the NFC was going to come from the NFC North. Obviously, the Eagles now look like not only the best team in the NFC, but probably the best team in the league. But I mean, you said it. The Packers are playing complementary football. The Vikings are playing complementary football. And the Lions aren't really playing complementary football because they have 20 guys out on defense, but their offense is so firepowered that they can get back into games where people are hanging 40 points on them. And that's really a true superpower. And we've seen people like the Atlanta Falcons back in the day make a Super Bowl off the back of an offense like that. And so just kind of honing in on this Vikings-Bears game, this division is going to be nasty for years to come, it seems like. Like the Lions are a little bit more of a veteran team that have obviously had health issues, but you look at that defensive backfield, there's a lot of young guys. You have Terrion Arnold, you have Ennis Rakestraw, you have Brian Branch, you have young guys like Jack Campbell, Malcolm Rodriguez, Aiden Hutchinson's a young guy, fluke injury that he's probably going to pretty easily overcome. We've seen Dak obviously struggle with that injury, but I think it's going to be a little different for a bigger guy playing a more power position where he's not really asked to run around all the time. And then you have an offensive line that has Penei Sewell on it and has a bunch of absolute killers. You look at the Packers, as we talked about, they have young guys literally all over the field. I was really excited about Edgerrin Cooper's return in this game. I thought he played fantastic on Sunday. And then you have the Vikings, who have some of the best players in the league. TJ Hawkinson, Christian Darrisaw. You have Jay Jettis, obviously. And then you have excellent coaching as well. The question then arises, and you brought it up at the front end, what happens with Caleb Williams and the Bears, especially given that you're 6 times out of the year going to have to play someone who most analysts going into any season, probably for the next 2 or 3 years, is going to think it's going to be a Super Bowl contender. And so we have Timothy chiming in. Caleb looks more like a developmental prospect than he thought he'd be coming out of the draft. Here's my kind of take on this, and I shared this with Shawn as we were prepping. I like ? Like, I'd prefer to see the traits pop out and see him, making the pieces connect from time to time and looking lost on the more mental side of stuff, play calling side of stuff, especially when you have all the kind of brouhaha that is going on around him. You have Shane Waldron coming in and then going out. You have the head coach going out. Like all that, I think, causes problems. But I'm unsure of how to approach it from a film perspective because some of it doesn't look good, Shawn. And so what are your kind of thoughts on the future of Caleb Williams and what that means for the Bears?
It is just a tough one overall because you come in with really high hopes. Where looking at this just Bears offense overall coming into the season, it was really easy to say, hey, this is the best offensive infrastructure that a rookie quarterback has ever had. And unfortunately, it doesn't turn out to be that way. Just the way that the offensive system is working, the way that the receivers are deployed in different ways. And it leads to a lot of people, unfortunately, losing their jobs for this team. And Sam, we think back to like Trevor Lawrence's rookie year, just kind of getting wasted. And you hope that whatever scar tissue that Caleb builds up, you hope that it doesn't continue to carry over in different ways. And I like that you mentioned, like, you do see things pop out at times, right? You see some of those throws to Odunze at the end of the game. Like he has a lot there. I'm not going to pretend like, oh, you have a tough season and we just like scrap every single thing that is positive about you. I think that early in the season, there was aspects of how much he had to just carry on his plate at the line of scrimmage that I felt like it was a positive just because, you usually don't trust a rookie with all of that, or maybe you do, but to see him kind of performing that really well was nice. At the same time, like we think back to CJ Stroud's rookie year, I mean, he didn't have to handle the protections. Obviously, you're involved in it, but the center is generally calling that in Houston. So is the next team or the next just coaching group going to find ways to take things off his plate, to streamline things? When we think about how Jaden Daniels has had some success in Washington, look, Sam, I'm just totally fine if you're going to be a quarterback that has a high first read throw rate. I just don't think that's something that you have to be ashamed of. I think it's totally fine. Like, I feel confident in how Jaden can read the game. I feel pretty confident how Caleb can read the game. Now, I do feel like some of the kind of deep ball accuracy issues, that's been a little bit tough, I think, recently, where you hope that you find different ways to figure that out, whether it's literally like how he sets his feet or just being a little bit more calm, through the pocket. You hope that in year 2 and really as year 1 ends, you're able to just slow things down just a touch. And instead of playing at 1.5 speed, maybe you end up playing closer to 1.25 speed. Eventually you get to that proper, just like normal kind of cadence of dealing with things. I do think that there still is a lot there. Like there really is. So I want to see, if we're to believe some of the reporting, say it ends up being Ben Johnson. What is your approach? Is it taking a kind of Detroit-centric approach where you have the under center heavy play action, you're finding those in breakers over the middle of the field? Is Caleb just comfortable with that? I think that he has the arm talent to absolutely do it. I want to see some of those deeper outside throws end up in catches to kind of end the season. So I think, unfortunately, a long way, it feels like, for the Bears. But no matter what happens, like, this team, this front office, for the next like 5 years, we're going to remember them based on how things go with Caleb Williams, for positive or for negative. And I certainly hope that it ends up being for positive.
Certainly. And I want to ask another question before we move on to some of the shenanigans in this game. Some quick hits to close it out before we touch a little bit on the NFC South and the outcome of the Falcons-Raiders game. But Shawn, you are the person that I know who knows the most about schemes and the most about how people adjust schemes for the personnel. And so you're sitting there and the Chicago Bears come up to Shawn Syed and the Stats and Scheme podcast, and you're able to get in the lab. What is your first inclination about what scheme they should implement based on what you've seen from some of the potential head coaches in this league right now?
I mean, just thinking about the hottest candidates, right? Thinking of Ben Johnson, where you have that like sort of mix of some Sean Payton-y kind of aspects. You obviously get the mix of McVay aspects through Goff and kind of marrying that where you're finding ways to make things clear for your quarterback. And Sam, I guess as you know, I love the schemes, but you don't have to just be tied to that. You need to have an entire coaching infrastructure where Kevin O'Connell in this matchup against the Vikings, that's a really good example where, yeah, he runs the McVay stuff, right? Like you look at some of the installs, you look at some of the plays they run, not that it's copy pasted, but it's going to be very similar, but you have to have a person that can cohesively see every single part of the unit. You have to have a staff that person really is able to trust and implement in every single way. And to me, again, like I hear your question. I just kind of punted a little bit because it has to be about player deployment. You know, are you finding ways to target Rome Odunze and attack down the field with him in different ways? Is it continuing to get DJ Moore on some of those like sort of Deebo Samuel-ish kind of feel? So, I mean, the default is always just like, oh, you know, what's your kind of, who is like the most recent guy off the Shanahan tree to pick? I would be really curious if a guy like Liam Cohen is able to get a chance where, you know, people may say, hey, you know, like you're 1 year kind of on that kind of hot just streak run as an offensive coordinator. How much kind of leeway are you going to get there? I do think that Cohen's done such a good job in the run game, and it just feels like this year just pushes me a little bit more towards, you know, having that that strong offensive line, that run game is able to do so much for a younger quarterback, and the way that I think Cohen has morphed that Tampa Bay Buccaneers run game, I really like that. But then it's hard to ignore a guy like Joe Brady, and in that situation, it's a little bit, you know, how do you separate him and Allen? I do think that he's gotten Allen to play. You know, you just reduce some of the negative plays where, I mean, Allen's a superhero, right? He's going to be able to avoid sacks, but you push the turnover worthy throws down just a bit as well. So for me, I need to see, feel, and hear a cohesive plan, like a strong teacher, obviously a person that is really talking directly to the quarterback. And now, do you have to have an offensive minded head coach? I don't want to just say you have to be married just to that. I don't want to see you have to reach on someone that maybe you didn't feel as good about or doesn't have as good of a connection. At the same time, like I say, and I really think it's true that this is just the next 5 years are tied to what goes on with Caleb Williams here. So you hope that you're just able to find a situation that's positive, a coordinator that's able to come in positive, a quarterback coach that is able to really reach Caleb to find the things that he works on, that to like through the offseason, you're able to grow. You're coming in year two. You don't have to worry about adjusting to what it's like to travel kind of through an NFL season and kind of adjust to those parts of the pro game. So you hope you're able to kind of focus on the good, you know, you amplify that, you build your offense around that, and then you're able to move on from there.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point. Timothy probably agrees with you a little bit about, you know, there's a lot of personnel needed. I was talking a little bit like, I think there's just a matter of all the wide receivers got to get on the same page. I thought Rome Odunze was a very good player coming in. We saw him be very effective on T-balls from Michael Penix. It just hasn't been able to work out. As you said, DJ Moore currently being used a little bit more like a Deebo Samuel, a lot of screens, a lot of handoffs being mixed in there. I'm going to start with Joe Brady because I thought you brought up some good points. I lean for this team the Joe Brady route if they're going to go the offensive coordinator route, because I think we've just seen him do it across places kind of at this point and get the best out of guys to a certain degree. You go back all the way to those Burrow days. Burrow wasn't and still isn't the most, you know, physically talented guy of all time. He was able to implement a shotgun-based offense that worked around him. Now, given he had the two best wide receivers in the league in college. So very helpful there, and a fantastic offensive line as well. But it's interesting seeing how he's approached the job with Josh Allen as well. And I think the assumption, the perhaps not. It definitely changes if a guy like Aaron Glenn gets involved as well. But the assumption would be that Ronald Curry may come with him as his offense coordinator. That was a guy in the Saints building for a very, very long time. I think that probably fits well with Caleb's profile a little bit too. But let's talk about Liam Cohen and let's talk about the Buccaneers. You know, how many offensive coordinators is Baker Mayfield going to get head coaching positions? Maybe it's
nice.
Baker.
It's great. Eventually, you gotta look at it and say, hey, you know, Baker's just a good player.
He's
like,
the
I don't have to
kingmaker.
fight that. I don't have to fight that at all. I'm not interested in fighting that. I do think, you know, in that win against the Chargers, where I mean, the Chargers are a defense that I've talked about with high praise all year because they have played at that level. They're able to push the Kansas City Chiefs in different ways. I mean, the Buccaneers really, really shredded them. I was impressed, and I've been really impressed with how Cohen has moved from that sort of wide zone McVay approach to we're going to maul you with our gap scheme run game, but also the way they get to it. I think when you have two running backs, sometimes where one running back in the backfield is he's now kind of the backside edge blocker and finding creative ways to get to counter, where Bucky Irving, I think, is having such a fun rookie year, like a really, really strong one where I think you feel positive about him as a player going forward. And yeah, maybe it is a little bit of Baker magic, of course, when you have Mike Evans, who I'm just so hard rooting for him to get to that 1,000-yard season. But then we got guys like Sterling Shepard making plays. We got wide open receivers all the time. So I think it's just so hard to push the quarterback play, the whole entire offensive line play, the whole entire unit play just away from the coordinator. And like, I always default to the guy that is running a successful offense, just because that's like the thing that that is the thing that is closest to like the most repeatable aspects of the game. But I am certainly a believer in like, don't just hire the scheme. Like, it's not just like, we can pick off a guy that is an assistant kind of from this team. You start leaning offense, but like that can't be the end all be all of it, right? You have to see things like, what's this person's emotional intelligence? How are they relating to staff? What kind of teacher are they? Are they going to be able to reach just the different minds that like you have to teach, where it's not like, or just now thinking about the players that are coming in from college, obviously through high school and continuing up that level, the way that they learn, are you able to kind of get to all of those players? So it feels like, you know, head coaching hires are such a difficult thing, like such a hard thing, where you can pretend like, after a year, is this person going to be a good one or a bad one? Obviously, it's just such a results driven league. I just hope that whoever the Bears get in the building, like we've talked about how tough of a division this is. I would not want to be playing in this division over and over just based on those other teams. You hope that you're able to get things, and it may not be that, hey, you're going to win the division next year, but you're just pushing things offensively in the right direction, creating a strong infrastructure, maybe leaning on that defense a little bit. You're able to be positive in the run game, and then you start to just get things moving in the right direction.
Yeah, certainly that makes sense. And echoing the thoughts about Mike Evans, having watched Mike Evans years and years as a Saints fan, it's incredible what this dude can do. I mean, he changes the whole offense, and that's really saying something, because Baker was really able to succeed without him on the field for weeks and weeks and weeks. And now it's become, as you mentioned, a supernova. Bucky Irving's able to break out. There's so much great stuff going on over there. They sit in first in the NFC South. The Falcons now sit, I think it would be a game back, right? I'm not looking at a non-updated
the Falcons
standings.
they have the tiebreaker because the Falcons beat the Buccaneers twice, which, like, now I'm thinking about that, it's like, man, like I really feel good about this Buccaneers team, but they also ended up losing twice to the Falcons, just in a weird situation. So, technically one game back in the win column. Of course, the Buccaneers are 8-6, the Falcons at 7-7, but yeah, the Falcons are winning that tiebreaker, even though they're like, I think like 120 points separated in terms of just point differential.
That's what I was going to hit on. The Bucks are 77 plus, over in point differential. The Falcons are minus 49. My whole take all year on the Falcons has been that they're just an average team. And the reason that they're average is because Kirk Cousins is their quarterback, and Kirk Cousins is, older and can't really get it done at this point. And we've seen them really lean on their run game. But what's really upsetting about this team to a certain degree is I love their weapons. I thought Bijan had a good game. I thought Algiers had a great season. I think Drake London is dangerous. I know there's been a lot of talk about Kyle Pitts, but we saw him, be able to convert a key third down and hook up with Cousins. And then I think Darnell Mooney has had an absolute breakout year. Not a lot of depth after that, but obviously in the running back room, they have some good depth. You have a Chris Lindstrom who received some votes for our Pro Bowl list. Is there any breakout coming anytime soon from this team? Or are we going to keep seeing them like week over week, up and down, really low, really high, in the middle, just kind of straight down the pipe in an average team?
When I look at the rest of their schedule, they have the Giants, the Commanders, and the Panthers left, and then the Buccaneers last 3 games of the Cowboys, the Panthers, and the Saints. So, I mean, it's realistic that I guess both of these teams went out. I'm glad that you mentioned all the weapons that the Falcons have. Like Darnell Mooney for me this year has been so fun to watch because it just felt like at times in his career, like he was constantly finding ways to get open, and now he just has this, like, if you can call it a breakout, just like really, really able to complete some of those explosive plays. And you mentioned like Drake London had a really nice route in this game where you're running that kind of fake in cut, whether it's a slant, whether you're just getting a one step, anything to get that cornerback to bite a little bit before you break outside. I do think that, it feels like the offense is limited just a little bit, whether it's, just like there's always just kind of something that's falling out of place. I think maybe they feel just what they're doing on offense, like they have to be limited just based on how much the quarterback can move, although Cousins had a nice little scramble today. So that was nice to see. I do think that, this defensive unit overall, where, I mean, they're good against Raiders. The Raiders offense certainly isn't the best in the league in any sort of way, but I don't know. I mean, I guess there's nothing wrong with being a team that is able to compete for the division. I think that they will be able to compete for it down to week 18. I think they have a really interesting situation in front of them as well, just what to do about the quarterback position overall. But now we have the TV cameras kind of cutting to Michael Penix all the time, over and over. You hope that Cousins is able to get healthy. You're able to just kind of make a good decision based on everyone. Now, I'm really curious just, how Penix is seen in the building. From everything I've heard, like, people really like him. He looks good in practice and things like that. So it feels like he's moving in the right direction as well. And, maybe you get the benefit of sitting for a year. You come out in year 2 really strong, where you still have those really, really strong weapons, and you're able to turn, Zach Robinson, I think, has shown that he's a good offensive coordinator in this league. You're able to kind of just push that offense up a whole nother level.
Yeah, I'm wondering what to take signal from. And I'm wondering if we're in the holding pattern and they don't think they have all the guys they need right now, and they think they have a good enough answer at quarterback to win the division and kind of move forward from there, and then go to Penix full blast next year, a la the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation. We've seen a couple other situations like that prior to, but also I wonder if there's like signal that he's not playing yet, especially given they're in striking position of a playoff bid. I don't know. It's very interesting to me, giving the patience. I know that Arthur Blank typically is very patient and allows general managers and head coaches to build rapport and build the team how they want to build it. So hopefully that's the case. And hopefully, we get to see a little bit of Michael Penix at some point, because he looked good in limited action, but he certainly has the tools to succeed at this level. Final thing, just looking at the Raiders, obviously, this is a 2-12 team. They're going to be in talks for the first pick in the draft. Weren't able to get the ball to Brock Bowers today. 3 catches on 6 targets, 35 yards. He seems like a megastar. It seems like quarterback is going to be the way they go. Is this a situation, Shawn, given your breakdown in previous weeks, that a quarterback can fix, or do you think there's other things to fix?
I think when you hit on your quarterback, it just like is the best Band-Aid over like every single issue. I do think you can create a strong part of this offense around Brock Bowers. He is really, really fantastic. He is so good at so many things. So I think that you can be positive overall there. Certainly you'd like to see them just, build out the offensive line, and you're just able to have a good infrastructure overall. I'm interested to see like which one do they pick? Do they feel comfortable with either of them? Are they a team that goes the bridge route, where, of course, we saw Sam Darnold in Minnesota? I think Sam Darnold has earned himself a lot of money, so I would be surprised if he stays in Minnesota. I'd love for him to be able to, just to stay in that positive situation. But, if you're Las Vegas, I think you look at a situation where maybe you're just bringing in, maybe not even a bridge guy, or it's a guy to start 3-4 games, a guy to help your rookie quarterback get acclimated. I just feel like when you hit that rookie pick over, like we look at Washington this year, Sam, obviously, you were very high on Jayden Daniels. You deserve recognition for that. But when you hit there, it covers up so many other things, regardless of what your schedule is, regardless of how your defense is in different ways. You're able to just move things where it feels like, your culture becomes winning because you have a quarterback that is able to do that. So I'm interested to just continue to hear about what the Raiders' processes are overall, what their offensive infrastructure is going to be, which of the quarterbacks they really like, obviously where they land. They might not just have that first overall pick, but it feels like Ward and Sanders are going to be the guys that are considered, 1 and 2, just as this kind of decision goes down to the wire. I think both of them have the chance to be successful in this league, and you just hope that the Raiders hit on right there. I hope that both of them are successful in this league, but of course the Raiders are certainly hoping to get the right one.
That makes sense. Shawn, we've gone a little long, but before I let you go, I don't think your best part of the football weekend was Dallas native Vanilla Ice playing at halftime of the Minnesota Vikings game. It may have been my favorite, maybe not, but let's get into it. What was your favorite moment of this football weekend?
Look, I mean, I really enjoy US Bank Stadium. I think it is a special place, and it's a special place in my heart just covering the team in 2022. My most important thing I think that happened this week was T'Vondre Sweat for the Titans, who I think has had a really, really good rookie year. He has been impressive in a lot of ways, but forcing a fumble on Joe Burrow, where Burrow's stepping up in the pocket, Burrow's moving. Burrow had a bunch of nice plays, extending plays against the Titans. Sweat is able to just kind of take the ball away from him, just totally steal it. You get a nice initial move where you're kind of forcing one quick missed tackle. Impressive. You get that agility, but Sweat wanted more than that, Sam. Just a stiff arm for the ages, where I felt like, am I watching Derrick Henry in this Tennessee Titans uniform, looking great, and then getting yards after contact too? So just for him to be able to do that at that size was really, really cool. In a week where we had a bunch of really good big man plays between Dan Skipper having just a nice catch and run after to score a touchdown. Jonah Williams for the Cardinals had a nice fumble recovery that was pretty athletic in the end zone for the Cardinals, where you're making sure your kind of shoulders aren't hitting that end line to have that. So Sam, I think that these guys are so athletic. They're so nimble. They're so agile. Even though when you look at them, I obviously have friends that are like, oh, like that guy, he's 350 pounds. Like, how fast can he move? These guys are freak athletes. So to see that on display, to see Sweat really, really hit that Heisman stiff arm was a fantastic part of this week.
Beautiful breakdown of the big man touchdown. The big man good play. The big man touchdown was Skipper dropping the hammer on a DB for really no reason. He could have just walked in, strode in as a nice lineman, but they like to get their rocks off too. They like to drop a shoulder from time to time. You can catch Shawn on SumerSports.com. His Monday morning mashup is up right now. You can also catch him wherever podcasts are found with our good friend Tej Seth. He's Shawn Syed. I'm Sam Brookhouse signing off from Sumer Sports. Thank y'all for watching.